Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hopefully, you are tuning in from somewhere fabulous, even if you're working today. I'm Rebecca Minkoff, co founder of the Female Founder Collective. And before we get started with my dear colleague, Tracy Margolies from Saks Fifth Avenue, I just want to remind you all that you have less than 24 hours to apply to join our private membership community, the 10th House, to get exclusive access to always on community, mentorship sessions, and expert led events so that you can connect with your fellow founders, funders, and operators. This is an incredible opportunity with this cohort to learn everything about fashion and beauty. We've had some amazing guest speakers and mentors, and there is so much more to come once the cohort launches. So, again, less than 24 hours. The link has been put in the chat so that you can all sign up today. If you add up all the matchas you drink, that's our membership price for the year. So it's definitely worth it to get the knowledge from experts like we have today. So without further ado, we will get started. I would be so excited. I'm so excited to tell you about Tracy. I met her many, many years ago when she was at Saks Fifth Avenue and overseeing the shoe business. And I was like, one day, I hope I'll get to work with Tracy. And then she came over to bags and shoes and has risen through the ranks at Saks. She is the Chief Merchandising Officer at Saks, where she oversees the merchandising strategy and initiatives across the Saks Fifth Avenue ecosystem. Tracy's leadership and expertise have helped to modernize and elevate the Saks Fifth Avenue merchandise assortment. She has over 25 years of experience in merchandising, including a 16-year tenure at Saks Fifth Avenue, during which she has overseen the merchandising strategy during Saks' transition to become the premier digital platform for luxury fashion. Previously, Tracy held senior leadership roles at Bergdorf Goodman, and prior to that, she was vice president, divisional merchandise manager for women's footwear at Saks Fifth Avenue. So this is a perfect person for you all, and you've submitted questions in advance, which I'm going to share. And welcome, Tracy. Thanks for coming today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited to be here.
So with everything, Fashion Week is upon us, so this was perfect timing. I think we're all preparing for the storm that is coming. But I'd love to first find out, you have a BA in psychology. What made you actually go then into fashion, which is its own psychological warfare, but of a different kind?
Great. Well, it's a few things. I studied psychology at school, which I loved. I went to the University of Maryland, and I'm a people person. So psychology felt like a natural extension of who I was. I'm that kind of friend that people always go to or always looking for help. And it really felt like the right way to go. But that being said, my family was always in this crazy industry. My great aunt had a store called Phillies in Brooklyn. And my grandmother had a little section of accessories. So on the weekends, I would go with her. I would work in the store. We would go to Javits Center and we would buy product. And I always had like this attachment to retail. And that being said, when I went to university, I took an internship at Bloomingdale's. And at that time, every other week, I did something different. One day I was in HR, one day I was with visual, one day I was in the buying side. And from that point on, I decided I wanted to be a buyer. I didn't really know exactly what that meant, but it was like my senior year that I just said, I'm going to be a buyer. And I set on, and that was my path. What I liked about it, it was like both sides of the brain. It was creative and it was financial. So I was able to jump right in. And again, from that point on, I was set on that path.
So a lot of people don't really understand, or when they hear the word merchant, they don't realize how critical it is for designer to have a merchant on their team or a store to have a merchant. Can you kind of explain what a merchant is and walk us through what led you to be the chief merchandising officer at Saks?
Sure. And I appreciate that because I like to say that merchandise is really important, especially in this day and
Just a
age.
little.
Right. Just a little. But it really all comes down to the product. The consumer today has so many choices that it's really critical to make sure you put so much of your time and effort into the merchandise strategy. And what led me here today and being the chief merchant of Saks is, in my career, I started at Bergdorf and I had many different roles. And I tried all different areas. I was in lingerie, I was in contemporary, all different areas. And every time I tried a new area, I learned how much I love product. And you keep on building upon your skill set. And there's things that you take from one area to another, and you just become a lot more intelligent about how you want to go about your business. But also, one thing that I learned very young in my career was that you learn from different people. So I continue to surround myself from different leaders in the industry, and I kept on picking up different tidbits and intelligence along the way. And as you grow in your career, you also get a little bit further away from product because you're more about management and leadership rather than just doing the buys. And that's okay because you're there to inspire others and to set the culture. And there's a lot of things along the way that you're doing. But that being said, you learn a lot and you share a lot as well. But you learn from different people and you take the good and you take the bad and you just continue to learn many different areas you pick up. And again, you could apply those skill sets to different things.
So this wasn't a question that was submitted, but something you said made me want to ask you. You go in and you see hundreds of designers per season, right?
Correct.
And when we're showing you, it's not lost on me that many times someone had been like, "Oh, we're covered there with blah blah blah," or "We have this from so and so," because lots of designers will follow a trend, and we all have a bucket bag, or we all have, a basket bag.
Right.
So how do you, as merchant, sort of help a designer identify what they should have in their line? And like, if you're like, we're covered here, but what we really need from you is X, how do you sort of decide when and how to do that?
So I think it's important to actually cover a white space. What are you doing that's differently than your competition? Sometimes it's quality, sometimes it's craftsmanship, sometimes it's perceived value. And all of that takes part in the decision on whether or not we pick up a brand. Also, a lot of the things that we think about is this brand going to be a one time only, or are we going to be in business with them for a while? Even if they're small at first and they're emerging, that's okay. But do they have the potential to be a larger brand? And that's something that I think about a lot. Okay, today, it's a small buy, but tomorrow we could actually work with this brand and really grow. And I think this is something that our consumers are really going to like. Again, the quality, the craftsmanship, the perceived value is there. And one thing I'd like to say is I think it's really important for brands to stay consistent in what they do.
Yes, I can attest to that, because when we went off course, there was a year where we went way off course. It was a bad idea.
I think it's hard. It's easy to get distracted, and everyone wants a piece of the pie. But I think consistency is key for sure.
Yeah, and I also want to touch on that. You mentioned white space, but there are going to be trends where everyone is showing straw, for instance, but it's
Right.
how you're doing it differently could be your white space.
Absolutely. It is important to be relevant. You want to be relevant, and trends are really important. I'm sure we're going to get into that, but trends are important because you want to stay relevant. You want to be a part of the conversation. And even if that's not always exactly what you want to stand for, it puts you in the conversation. But it is important to be consistent. So if you're part of, the hobo bag, how do you do the straw in the hobo?
Right.
So it's.
So, as the chief merchandiser, I know you touched on it a bit. Today it's a lot about leadership and management, but what does your role entail? If you want to give day to day or, week to week, and obviously that changes on the weeks that you're seeing collections versus in the office.
So I'd like to say that I'm very hands-on. It's really my approach is I have an open door policy. I try to be accessible to the team. I like to go to market appointments. For me, it's always been about the touch and feel. I thrive in a showroom. I love being in a showroom. That's just my heart and soul. I could walk in a showroom and say, that's going to be a bestseller. And right off the bat, it just feels really good because being where I am today, the thing that I've learned that really gets me going is my passion for product and the people. But it's wonderful to be there and to do a walkthrough, whether it's a walkthrough in the showroom or necessarily on the floor and give people feedback of what we see is different, what the opportunities are.
And so, for your role today, what do you think your key performance indicators are that show you success from a brand?
So just like anyone else, we're always looking at the financials, the data, the analytics, how's the sell through? How's the gross profit? How are the receipts doing? How are the new receipts doing? So we're always looking at all the data and analytics. Also, like, what are we hearing from the customers? Is there any feedback? How's the fit? How's the quality? What does conversion look like? So there's all the data and analytics. Also, like, sometimes it takes a little bit for a brand to take off. The first season, are we doing better than last year? You're almost in competition with yourself. Last year was a little softer, but we worked on these. And this is where, as long as we're moving forward, I think that's really important. But you always have to listen to the customer.
For sure. I mean, I can't tell you how many times a buyer comes in and they say, they're not saying is doing better than you. It's, are you doing better than you were last year? So
Right.
it really is true that you are in competition with yourself, not anyone else.
Exactly.
And if you're increasing, believe me, then the store gives you increases.
Yes. It's
So,
organic.
huh?
It's organic.
It's organic. So I was really annoyed when the whole direct to consumer trend occurred and everyone thought that wholesale was dead. And I'm happy to see that everybody who has done D2C is now coming back
Mhm.
around. And what is your view of how to be successful in wholesale in this landscape where you need brick and mortar, you need
Right.
e-com, you need direct to consumer, you need wholesale, frankly.
I think, what I hear from the vendor community is it's great to be a balance. It's great to have a balanced portfolio. Wholesale is very important because it also legitimizes to other brands like I'm in the store, I'm surrounded by these. It also gives customers may not know that brand, but it also gives them a self of awareness of that brand.
Yep.
Oh, this brand is sitting next to this brand. I never heard of this brand. And it gives them that sort of acknowledgement that, oh, maybe I should try on this brand. I should look at this brand. The same thing with editorial on the site. I'm sitting with these brands. So it helps the brand awareness for sure. And I think that's really important. But I think a balanced portfolio is key.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think every time we get in the past when we've been unbalanced in either direction, the business suffers. And when we get it back to these ratios that we feel are good for us, the business continues to thrive and grow. And for those out there, it is so expensive to do D2C. And when you're in an account like a
Mhm.
Saks, it's not free advertising because you're obviously working with the store and shipping, but it is far more economical to be in a retailer like that if you have the right margin structure than paying God knows what to acquire a customer off an ad. So just want to put that plug out there for anyone thinking about getting into wholesale. Um, before we get into this next set of questions, another thing I hear from this community is like, oh, I just want to be in a department store because they think it solves all problems.
Right.
Um, I'm like, well,
Big
it's a
perception.
new set of problems. My old sales rep was like, you have to be in 500 specialty stores before your brand even has enough awareness to thrive in a department store. So when would you say a brand is truly ready to be in a department store or at Saks?
So, I mean, I really go by small and steady wins the race. Like, it's not about how big, how fast you could grow, because sometimes you have to learn along the way. So, what are my key items? What is the customer reacting to? What's the key price point? If you go too fast, I think that is something that you're not learning as along the way. So, I think it's about how's your price structure? How are your deliveries? How's the quality? How are you feeling about things? Can you be consistent? Again, I mentioned that before, but consistency is key. How many deliveries will you have a year? How do you feel about the assortment?
And
You
would
only
you
have one time to launch. It's like Broadway. So I always say, like, are you in a good place to launch? Because the client won't forget. So make sure that you have like all your ducks in a row before you launch.
yeah. So when I first started out and my agency was like, you're not ready to go into wholesale, I was like, you're wrong. I'm right. I'm going to sell to X department store. I won't say the name.
Right.
And I wasn't ready because the brand awareness wasn't there. And they called and they said, we have 200 bags. We need to ship them back to you. And at that time, 200 bags was like
Wow.
an ungodly amount of excess inventory. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I was like, no, they have to keep it. They bought it. And she was like, they will never work with you again if you don't take these bags back. And you're going to need to work with them in a couple years when you're ready. So we took the bags back. That was, what prompted our first sample sale. But
Right.
I'll never forget if I had just waited and we had done it right, like you said, and be truly ready, then that's the best opportunity versus sort of being too thirsty for it too early and
I
not being
agree.
prepared.
I think about there's a lot of brands where we're celebrating their 10-year anniversary or their 20-year anniversary, and they're a household name now, household names now.
Yeah.
And I think about, oh, that brand should have been around so much longer. But I think about how long it takes for a brand to be recognized. How long does it take to get in the thick of it all? But these things take time, and you want to make sure that you're profitable along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I still, there was a big announcement about me joining this show this last week. And in the comment section was like, who is that? What's her name? Never heard of her. And I was like, It's been 20 years, but I guess I still have more work to do. So,
Well, congratulations
oh,
on that, by the way.
thank
That's
you.
gonna be fun.
It'll be interesting. It'll be a wild ride. Um, so I'd love to pivot into discussing partnerships between retailers and brands.
Great.
I have a few questions about this specifically. If I'm looking down, it's because I'm reading these questions, everybody. Um, First, what are some of the best practices for building and sustaining a strong working relationship with a brand? And maybe you can give a couple of examples of when anonymously a brand didn't do a good job and then the ones that have.
Sure. I mean, for me, I think it's always about transparency and communication. So, knowing what each of the party wants to do, what's the strategy, what's the 3-year plan, where do you want to be, where do you want to grow, what are what are you thinking about the adjacencies, what's the assortment going to look like, and everyone being upfront with what the strategy is, what my expectations are as a retailer. These are the sell-through expectations. This is how we want to grow. This is the minimum volume, or these are the volumes that we'd like to hit for the first season, so that you're really clear upfront what your goals and your strategies are. So I think that's really important. And then one thing I always talk about is this like win-win relationship. And to me, that's really important because we're here for the long term. And I don't want to walk out of a meeting and say, I feel really good. I got that RTV. But then poor you is like, what am I going to do with these goods? Like, how do we figure out a time and a place and a way that we're working together, that we're establishing a win-win relationship? And those relationships for me have always been really important in long-term success because there's that trust factor out there and you're all working towards the same goals and you're doing what you can for the business.
Yeah. One thing I want to go a little deeper on is sell through, because as a direct to consumer brand, we don't really every day talk about sell through. We look at the overall revenue of the business. We know if we need to sell things at the end of a season, we have a vehicle for that. But wholesalers, especially bigger department stores like a Saks, it is about sell through and your performance on a weekly basis. So can you sort of break down why and how that is, and just the metrics for a healthy sell through versus not?
Yeah, I think every business has a different business model. Sell through for me is when we look at the full price sell through. And what you want to do is look at what percentage of your business you're selling at full price. And that's really important because that all goes down to the profit. You want to make sure that you're engaging with the client at that full price model. So that's really important. But you could have a business that has either core or continuative, that you're selling basics, and that also helps the full price model. So there's all different ways to look at your overall profit at the end of the season, but full price sell through is just an easier indicator when you have a fashion delivery and you want to get to a certain sell through before the suggested markdown.
And that's usually every 3 months, everybody. So, right, you wanna sell, you
Designer,
want
some of the businesses have a little bit of a longer leeway. Sometimes there's suggested carryover, but for the most part,
and what would you say, what are the criteria you look at from a brand, and what should sort of designers know that you're like, "All right, new brand, I'm interested."
for me, sometimes it's that you're filling a white space. How are you different? What is there something special that you're offering that I don't currently have in my assortment? At the same point, what is the quality and the craftsmanship and the perceived value? How is that looking versus others? And how do I feel about that? And then also the longevity. Again, maybe it could start off as a small emerging brand, but I could think that, in a few seasons from now, I think this could grow to something big and this can be an important brand for us. And that's something we're always looking at everything. Or sometimes it's really hitting the trend and it's great and it's doing phenomenal. It looks great. It's a standout.
Yeah. What would you tell designers who initially they launch with fashion, which is obviously the eye candy, and then they have that "oh shit" moment where they have to build a sustainable business, and as you said prior, core, right? So core for us, we have a lot of very saleable, I call them the meat and potatoes. That's not your editorial bag. It's not the bag that any VIP influencer celebrity will ever carry, but it's what women everywhere throughout the country are buying as their, bag they're going to have for the next couple of years. So how does a designer know when to not just do the eye candy and when to launch a core, and how to sort of right size that part of the business?
I mean, I think it's important to have iconic especially in accessories and footwear and handbags, there's usually an iconic shape
Yep.
that a designer is known for. And it's important to have that. That's where you built your success on.
Yep.
That being said, are there ways to freshen that up each season? Is it a new material? Is it a new color? Like right now, I'm really loving this oxblood. So, could you do your favorite shape or your best selling shape in a new color? And then at times, you definitely want your assortment on site or in store to look fresh. So, are there other colors that, go away and you move forward into something new? But it's important to, especially in accessories, to have iconic shapes, and that's who you are. Also for fit, for footwear. People go back to the same fit if they're comfortable, but they might want something new and a new material and a new color, or how does that look fresh every season?
Yep. So, for a designer looking to form a partnership with a retailer, what is your best advice? It can be hard to get a hold of a buyer, where to see them, you know, how do you even get your stuff in front of them?
So I think it's important to be consistent and to continue to go and ask. If you can't get an appointment with the buyer, maybe there's someone like in the fashion office, or you could reach out to the assistant buyer. But I think it's important. Most people really do reply to all designers.
Yep.
And then take feedback. Take constructive feedback. So what do you think I could do differently? What do you think the voids are? Or, what are you missing? What are you looking for in your assortment? I would ask a lot of questions and be a sponge and listen to what the feedback is. But I would also, like, people that email me all the time, and I can imagine getting a lot of emails after this, but people email me all the time. I always write back. I always try to see people. I always look at a lookbook. Sometimes it's, as quickly as you can. You could do a Zoom now. A lot of people are doing Zooms. Can I walk you through the collection for 10 minutes over Zoom? Time is valuable to everyone, but I think there's a way to get in front of people for sure.
What would you say, how can designers who are starting out, right? I have the luxury of my CEO is also our chief merchant. You're a merchant for
Mhm.
Saks Avenue. So how can designers who can't afford that or might not, get to interact with someone like you begin to even turn on that part of their brain of what to look for so that they are making sure they know what their right assortment looks like?
So I think it's important to shop competition and to be in the know. And right now, again, you could shop all different sites and you could look at what you're showing versus others just to see how it's merchandise. Am I missing, example in footwear? Am I missing a low heel? Am I missing a flat? I'm seeing a lot of flats out there. So, shop the competition. I think that's really important. Go stand in a store and see what the clients are asking for. See what it feels like. See what your assortment looks like on a table versus others. And if something that excites you, most likely it's going to excite others. And see what that is and touch and feel.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
always inspired by others, and I think that's a good way to get like a good broad perspective of what you're doing.
Yep. So, what, if you don't mind naming names, what have been some good, like, young designers that you've spotted that ended up, bringing to the table great product and have turned into longer term partnerships?
It's funny. I was like thinking about this like all the time. Like, who have I known for so long? And since we're talking about accessories, I would say like Alexander Berman or Alcazora. I remember the days like when I picked them up and look at them flourish. Like, I'm so proud to see and exciting to see what journey they've been on and to see their product continue to flourish for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they started out tiny
Right.
and now they have huge,
Huge. And
huge.
they're well known, which is, it takes time. That's why I continue to say it does take time.
Yep. Yep. And they've been around for more than 10 years each, I
Yes.
think, right?
Yes.
So I think everyone tuning in, you have to just adjust your time horizon. You might have that overnight pop, but it's sustaining it for a long period of time. That is the key. So I would be remiss before we get to some audience questions and without asking you trends, because we are getting into fashion week
Right.
and it is fall fashion. So what do you think some of the important trends of Q4 of 2024 are and any predictions for 2025?
Sure. Well, I'm really loving this bohemian trends right now. And I think that's only going to get stronger. I think it's really an exciting time for that and just femininity overall.
Yeah.
So that's like super exciting. We're definitely seeing Sahara, which is like more of like safari, leopard. Some of the things like we always select and we love a good leopard.
Yes.
Leopard's exciting. I think that will continue. And just people overall are definitely getting dressed. So excited to see that and an evolution of that.
And when you say like You're saying this for fall, you're already seeing it, and
Yeah.
into spring for
Yeah.
both? Okay,
Well, we're going to see spring runway soon.
that's right.
But I am loving that color oxblood. I think it's a great color. I think it's good for a lot of people, and it goes back to black and gray, and it's just a beautiful color. I think that's going to be really
Yeah.
great for clients.
Yeah, when we first introduced Oxblood, it was like we couldn't keep it in stock. So that's good to know. We got it coming. All right, so a couple audience questions. This is from Emmy. How important is a social media following when considering a partnership with a new brand?
I think it's good to know what people have for social media because it's good to know about the brand awareness overall, and social media in general is important. But I think it's one of many indicators for sure. But there are other things that are important. Again, the quality, the craftsmanship, looking at the actual product. What does that look and feel like?
Yep.
The brand perception, all of that.
Yep. I think it's a great question because as a designer now, when we're casting models, we look at their social media and see if they have a following. And sometimes we'll lean to someone who just organically has a bigger following because we know when we post and tag them that it's going to see a lot more eyeballs. So that's a great question, Emmy. Um, so Ashley wants to know, what are the red flags and green flag signs when searching for a mentor? We didn't really talk about mentorship,
Sure.
but this might be a good time to bring up, how you mentor, and what are some of the signs?
So I think mentorship is really important. I think I've had a lot of mentors along my career, whether it be Mark Metrick or Josh Schulman or Ron Frash. It's been an amazing journey for me.
Ugh, Ron, you just brought back so many memories.
I know. He's so amazing. And for me, it's like, different mentors bring different things to you along your journey and where you're at. I remember just like leaving Ron's office and like always trying to do better for him. Like I always had to do better. I always had to deliver. And it was like a great feeling. And for me now, I love to mentor the team. Like part of my job that I love the most is being around the people and trying to inspiring them and get them excited about what we do. We're in fashion. So how do you inspire people? And people that are passionate about what they do are super successful because they love doing it.
Yeah.
People would say to me, what are your hobby? And I like in a sad way, like some of my hobby is fashion. Like I used to spend every weekend in the stores and just touching and feeling. And now, of course, we're scrolling all the time. It's different. But I think mentorship is really important. You want someone that's going to be open and honest with you and push you to do your best. And that's really critical. And one of the things I also learned in my career is that working for different people, you learn different things. And it may not be always someone that you're like, oh, we're a great match or we're not a great match, but you learn different things from different people. And, even being on the other side, surround yourself with different people because you continue to learn from other people.
100%. And sometimes they're going to push you into uncomfortable places, but that's where you grow. So
Right.
don't be sad if someone's being tough on you and trying to get you to grow. It's never comfortable.
No, it's never, and comfort, that's a way of learning discomfort.
Yep, for sure. There's a lot of discomfort in our industry.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of change. It continues to evolve.
I know. So for someone who is in their 40s and looking to, this is from Lily, change their career, I'm assuming into fashion, in their 40s, do you have any good advice?
I think it's always a good time to change your career. That being said, because if you're not happy with what you're doing and you're passionate about something, there's an opportunity. I
Hmm.
think LinkedIn is probably a really great measure of understanding all different aspects of the business or any business at that sort. And then you find people that you could reach out to. Like, is there someone that you could go grab a coffee with or something that you're interested in? But I think it's always a good time. Listen, I was reading something the other day, like people are successful at different points of their career. Um, but at 40s, and I like to say, because I'm older than that, at 40s, I'd like to say that you have a long journey ahead of you of working and you should enjoy what you do. And there's always opportunities for people that believe in what they do.
Yeah, and I would add to that, like sometimes as you're changing careers, you might be starting out at the bottom, right? And have to work your way up of this new industry. So, don't be sad or disappointed that you might be starting from the ground at an entirely new thing, but that's how you learn the best. And it might take time to grow and get through the ranks. But if you're older, you're also wiser, and you can also outwork a lot of the people that don't want to work nights and weekends, or, um, who have quietly quit. So
Right.
if you're over 40, you don't even know what quietly quitting is or how to do that.
Right.
Um, so Coco has a question. What has been your biggest challenge in your career, and how did you navigate it?
So I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but I'm a single mom by choice. And to me, it was about balancing and trying to figure out the balance between my personal life and my professional life. And it was something that I was really stressed about before I had my son. And it just came natural. You know, when you're in a moment, you have to be in that moment. When you're at home, I'm in that moment. And it's about the quality, not necessarily the quantity of time. But again, like I love what I do, so I'm passionate about it. And there's always a time for work, but there's always a time for personal. And I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges that I had, was just making sure I had that balance. And that was really important to me. And being in front of a lot of women, I do want to impress that it's okay. You can have it all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's time management, it's boundaries, it's a village that you build around you, right?
Right.
And I think we forget that we were tribal for a very long time, and we did have a village, and now we've gone into our homes and apartments and don't speak to our neighbors. And so you almost have to rebuild that village to make this work.
Right.
So I have two more questions for you, and then I'll let you get back to your incredibly busy day. This is from Flores. How do you measure the success of your company, Saks Fifth Avenue, and what does success look like to you?
So again, a lot of this is you're competing with your own LY. So there's a lot of data and financials that need success. So there's the financial piece of it, but there's also the culture piece of it. How's the team? How are they feeling? Are they happy? Are they passionate? Do they like being here? So there's the people part of it, and then there's the financial part of it. And that's how, for me, that's how I measure success.
Yeah, that's great. So, piece of advice. What is your number one piece of advice for early stage fashion and accessories brands?
So my number one advice would be to stay consistent. You really need to stay consistent with your strategy and, have a goal in mind and work towards that goal, but be clear. And you might have to shift gears to get there, but stay consistent, because what you're passionate about and what you believe in, you have to go with your gut. And usually your gut is the right way to go.
Yep.
And listen to people along the way. Listen, get advice, be open minded. But you definitely, if you have a vision, stay true to your vision.
Yeah. I'm going to double down on that, because I think if you establish your brand pillars early enough and why people come to you and what makes you special, then you just don't veer from that. Like, we realized a long time ago, we didn't need to be the brand that went to Ibiza and Spain and Italy for inspiration. We're like, no, we're downtown New York. That's our girl.
Right.
That's where she lives and breathes. And what does she eat? And where does she go to on her nights out? And what perfume does she wear? And really, we built this almost AI character of our customer. And as long as we tell that story, right, and stay consistent with what she would wear, we win. It's every time we've gone off.
Right.
Oh, it's a modern gender neutral trend. Well, our girl doesn't like that from us, right?
Right.
She wants studs, embellishment, hardware. So sometimes it's staying true to yourself, even though some things can swing wildly the other way. Um,
True.
so I love that you said that as your last piece of advice.
I
Thank you so
appreciate it.
much for taking the time to help and support these budding entrepreneurs and founders who have just launched. I can't thank you enough for your support.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here today.
Yeah. And before we wrap, everybody, just another reminder, if this has been any value to you, the amount of value we provide to you in the community is 100 times this, because you get this every week, and then you get it in person in our cities, you get it at our live events. So you have less than 24 hours to join our 10th house fashion and accessories beauty cohort. The link will be in the chat. And thank you for tuning in today, and see you at the 10th house soon. Bye.
Bye.